Well, good afternoon again, everyone. My name is Emily Schaefer, and I am the Director of Development here at the Midland Area Community Foundation. And I also have the privilege of being a past president for the Mid-Michigan Chapter of the Association of Fundraising Professionals. And so I am so pleased to be a part of this conversation and engage in this just incredible work, and excited to introduce someone that I have had the privilege of knowing since I've been in the world of philanthropy. Gosh, now it's over 8 years ago now. But before I introduce her, I do want to share that AFP is, I say AFP for those of you that don't know what AFP is, it is the Association of Fundraising Professionals. And it's a national organization. Actually, now it's a global organization that engages folks that are working in fundraising and encouraging people in philanthropy. And so if you're not currently a member, we ask you to consider joining. Visit afpglobal.org to learn more about how to do that. And then the Mid-Michigan chapter is the chapter that is hosting this free webinar. And so, as I mentioned again, this is an incredibly important topic. And one of the things too that I really want to encourage you all with is to really be thinking about how you can activate and engage in this important work. So not just be hearers of the presentation and the conversation today, but also be doers. And so just be mindful of that and maybe think about a way that you can share something that you want to do as a result of this conversation, and then maybe share it with somebody and have an accountability buddy, if you will, to really take action. So without further ado, I want to introduce my friend in philanthropy, Donna Murray Brown. Donna is the president and CEO of the Michigan Nonprofit Association, or as we like to say, MNA. And she is the driving force behind MNA's strategic direction and operations. And most of you have seen her full bio in the invitation and flyer that was out there for this webinar or call. And so I wanted to just give a couple of personal highlights that I have had the privilege of seeing. So Donna, my first introduction to Donna was with the Council of Michigan Foundations, which the Midland Area Community Foundation and many community foundations are a part of. And just seeing her heart for philanthropy, not only community foundations, but really all nonprofits in Michigan. She is an advocate and an ambassador for each and every nonprofit association. And that was something that I could see right away when I first got to know her through the Council of Michigan Foundations. She also has a way of making people want to join her. I remember one of her presentations actually with this AFP chapter, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, where I wanted to just join in and let's go. And so it's, I think that's what I'm most excited about today, is to really learn how can we proceed in this space. And then also just this past year, Donna Murray Brown has also helped with the census and making sure that Michigan really had a complete and accurate count. And I know that there was many hands in that work, but she was one of the leaders that really to make sure that Michigan had a complete and accurate count so that we could get the most federal dollars possible to really alleviate the needs that so many of our Michigan nonprofits have. And so I had the privilege of kind of seeing that from the outside too. But Donna is going to speak with us today about her experience as a Black woman in today's environment and how we can all be more intentional to support the principles of inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. So without further waiting, Donna, we'll give it to you.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you so much. Thank you, all of you who decided to spend some time out of your busy schedules to listen to me. I think that's just super amazing and super humbling. I want to say thank you for inviting me. And what I understand is the first conversation of its kind that the Association of Fundraising Professionals Mid-Michigan is having. And you asked me to be one of the first to be part of this. So this is very, very exciting. I also want to say thank you for acknowledging lots of the great work that M&A is doing. And you were spot on when you said there are a ton of people doing that. And many of them are on this, this Zoom meeting conference session, if you will, cheering me on. And that's my team at M&A. So a shout out to all of them that are joining today, because I know they're busy as well, but they decided they want to know what's going on with Donna Murray Brown as well. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully things will cooperate with us. I just want to make sure everyone can see my screen. Good. All right. So if you're looking at my screen, it makes it truly hard to see me. And when you're not seeing me and I'm not seeing you, it makes for, I think, a less kind of engaging opportunity. So what I'm going to ask you to do, I'm going to beg you to do this, in fact, is use the reaction buttons that are, that Zoom provides to you, whether you're angry, you love it, or you have, if there's an appropriate icon that you can use, that would be great. Also at the end, it will be some time for question and answers. What I like to do, and in just thinking about this moment that I would have with you, it was really about, yes, I am a Black woman leading, right? I'm leading in Michigan's nonprofit sector, the philanthropic sector. However, I think it's important for me to be able to provide you with context around my life. Like what, we are all a sum of our experiences, right? So a context about my life, and then provide you with some content, some facts, right? Around what does it mean for people of color, women, leaders, and what does it mean around their experience? And then I like to have a conversation with you. So what I'm going to do really is I'm gonna start from the beginning. That's okay with everybody. I'm gonna see if I can still see some of you. Yeah, I can if I do that. 1 second here. All right, so let's start from the beginning. This is my beginning, folks. This is my mom, my dad. I was the firstborn in my family. And then of course they have a few kids and that messed up everything. But for a moment in time, I was the only and I am the first. And what you don't know about this smiling picture, this kind of all-American family, a dog, a child, parents, is that my mother was from New York City, very progressive background, right? And she had big hopes and dreams for her children. My father also had big hopes and dreams for his children, but it was mostly for if he had a man child. But the first child was a girl child. And so with that, it wasn't, I don't want to say he was disappointed. I think he fell in love with me later. But initially it was like, I think for her future, it's really going to be about making somebody a good wife. So that's what he really instilled was, you're going to be a good wife. You need to know how to sew. You need to know how to type. I don't know why that was necessary for marriage. And you needed to be able to know how to cook and those kinds of things. That's what my father's aspirations were for a girl child. My mother, not so much. My father from Detroit, mother from New York. And that's my favorite dog. I actually remember Reno. And so that was my first real friend. But that's my beginning. I think it's important to start with the context of what were the hopes and dreams of my family for me. So I graduated from Cass Tech. I don't know if anyone's on the line from the city of Detroit, but Cass Tech, why that's important is it's the first public school I went to. What was interesting is my mother being from New York had really not a lot of money at all. My grandmother was a domestic worker and she spent all of her money on school, on Catholic school to be exact. So that was my mother's orientation. She said, my kids have to go to Catholic school. So my mother being a licensed practical nurse, not having gone to college, and my father, who you just saw, was a bus driver. Neither of one of them went to college. My mother decided that she would use her money to send me to Catholic school. And if anybody went to Catholic school, it was great, right? Very rigid. And so I couldn't wait to break free after 8th grade. I'm like, I'm going to a public school. However, I was smart enough to say, Cass Tech, at that time and still today, is a wonderful school. You have to test to get in. My parents wanted me, or my mother really wanted me, to go to Benedictine, which was a Catholic high school. But they decided, my mom decided that's where I would go. But I decided I would take the test to get into Cass on my own, forge my parents' signature on the document for me to take the test. Yes, I did that. I don't do those kinds of things anymore, I might say. But I did that. I got into Cass Tech. And I got the approval acceptance letter, and my parents said, well, okay, you can go to Cats Tech. Thank goodness, no more uniforms. But it was a high achieving school. Now, between 1983 and what you see in the picture, 1988, yes, that is a college graduation picture. I went to Central State University, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes, but between 1983, when I graduated, and before I went to college, I went to community college because my parents really couldn't see how economically they were going to send me to college. Like, my mother knew she wanted me to go, but she didn't really know how to go about it. I was a very quiet child, so I didn't ask my guidance counselors for help, nor did they help me. It was a big school. I had 1,000 people in my graduating class, if you can imagine that. So I got lost in the shuffle. So going to college was really another notion that I had to, again, create for myself because I didn't have much guidance. So I went to community college, and I went to Henry Ford Community College at that time, but it's called Henry Ford College. It is a 4-year institution now, but it's a 2-year institution. And the reason why I want to share a little bit about this story, because it provides you some context of what it meant for me to be a Black person. See, at Cats Tech, it was very diverse. There were so many different races and ethnicities. And also in my private school, my Catholic school, the same thing. But when I went to Henry Ford College, things were a little bit different. So let me give you an example. I decided I wanted to have an exercise and jogging class. One, I needed to lose some weight. Plus, I thought, I really wanted to be able to be more physically fit, and I thought I needed to have some training. So I went to exercise and jogging. It was in a gym, and there was a gym teacher, a white male. It seemed to be maybe in his 50s at that time. Of course, I'm just out of high school, so I wouldn't know. Everyone seems old when they're not 20 years old, right? So I'm not exactly sure how old he was. But I was the only and the first Black person in this particular class because I was told that that's what I was. So anyway, what we had to do as part of exercise and jogging is run around the gym. And the gym had exit doors all over the place, but we would have to run around the gym. It was a set amount of time, and then you had to do some exercises, and then you were done. And the gym teacher just went into his office, which was also located in the gym, that had a window, but he would keep the blinds down. So all the students knew that. So what they did was they ran about 1 or 2 times, and they recognized he wasn't going to come out, and they went out the exit door. Me, on the other hand, who always wanted to play by the rules. I know I told you I forged my parents' signatures, but for the most part, I always wanted to play by the rules. I ran around and around and around till exhaustion, did all the exercises, and completed the class every single day. When it was time for grades, though, we were all on the floor, and he yelled at our grades. When he got to me, Murray, he said, everyone was like, A, A, A. He got to Murray, he said D. And I'm like, is he saying D for Donna, like Donna Murray D, or is he saying D? He gave me a D. So I was heartbroken. One, I had never gotten a D, and I didn't understand why I got a D in exercise and jogging because I was doing the work and everybody else wasn't, but they got an A. So what did that mean? So after everyone was gone, I decided to knock on his door and ask him about my D, and my heart was pounding because this man was physically big too, and he was just intimidating. And I said, may I see you about my grade? You gave me a D. He said, so what? I said, well, I don't understand. I did everything that you asked me to do. And he said, and you gave everybody else an A, and they really didn't do it, but I did it. And so he said, and I want the grade that I deserve. I want an A too. He said, no. And I said, why not? I don't even want your kind here, is what he said. And I'm like, my kind? Oh my gosh, he is talking about me as a Black person, or me as a woman, or me as a Black woman. I don't know what kind he's talking about, but I was kind of quick with it. So I said, you know what? How about this? How about I negotiate with you? I'm going to an African-American school. I'm going to a historically Black college and university. So I'm going to transfer from here to there. But in order for me to transfer and get the grades that I need to transfer, I need an A out this class. And so what that means for you is I get an A, the A that I think I deserve, you get my kind gone, and we both win. He said, okay, B. So I got a B in exercise and jogging when everybody else got an A, and I did the work. And that was my first recognition of what it meant for me to be a Black woman. So I really wanted to go to a historically Black college and university. And the only way I knew about that is because I had a neighbor down the street, Mrs. Jacqueline McKinney, who was an educator, who had her bachelor's degree and her master's degree. I never knew anybody intimately who had those 2 degrees. And she went to Central State. So of course, I'm going to go to Central State. And I felt like I needed to be in a place, especially after the experience at Henry Ford Community College, that I needed to feel nurtured and I needed to feel loved. And I actually felt like I needed to be with my kind, just like the instructor said. So that's what I did. So it was amazing experience going to a historically Black college and university. No offense to any other experience, but for me, it built my confidence. It allowed me to be around people like Muhammad Ali and Oprah Winfrey and so many different people who poured into me intimately and made me feel like I could fly, like I could do whatever I wanted to because I was Black and because I was a woman. So I really appreciate that experience. And yes, I went through a lot of financial aid. I did a lot of work study and I didn't have a big bill when I came out. My parents couldn't afford it, but it all worked out for me. And then if you see here, this is a diploma. It's a diploma for the University of Detroit Mercy. I was the first person to graduate undergrad. And I'm also, and this gets me a bit emotional, the first person to graduate and get a graduate degree. And this is important because it broke the trajectory, I think, for my family to be able to know that we can do whatever we want. And my mother always believed that education was the key for us to advance ourselves. And so I'm proud to say that in my family, I'm the first generation college graduate, first generation with a graduate degree. And then also really happy to say that my commencement is later this week. So I finished in December 2020, but I get to wear my cap and gown and I get to, have this whole, festivity. So I'm super excited. I'm super excited about that. So my banking journey. So after college, I went into banking. Now, what's interesting about going into banking for me is, again, I just kind of kept to myself and I believed in myself, but I didn't really seek a lot of advice, and perhaps things would have been different for me if I would have. But what I did was I decided that I wanted to work in banking because I had my mom's sister, my aunt. She worked in banking. She was a manager. And all I knew is she dressed nice. She was around money and it seemed cool. It was like 9 to 5 and it was like an office job. It just seemed like a big deal to me. So for me, I decided that I would walk to my neighborhood bank and I would sell myself to the manager and say, I want to work here. I thought I was going to work like in the branch, my neighborhood branch. But what I found out is that I was accepted and they accepted me. Like she said, oh my gosh, you're just super amazing. I'm going to have to just tell the management training program at NBD Bank, National Bank of Detroit, for all those who remember that bank, I'm going to have you be part of the management training program. So my banking career started by me walking to the branch and then me being in a management training program, which is so funny to me. But I did really super well in the banking system. And I got promoted like to positions I didn't think I deserved. I have a super duper imposter syndrome complex here where I just felt like, why are you promoting me? And I didn't know the job, but they said, but you're trainable. You've got a great attitude and you're smart and you can do this. You'll be fine. So I kept getting promoted. And when the bank got bigger, it actually purchased a failing savings and loans bank in Columbus, Ohio. And why that's important is because that's where I had the second opportunity to recognize what it meant to be a Black woman leading. So I was sent to Columbus, Ohio, because they needed bankers. They needed experienced bankers. MBD had purchased this, but they wanted their people in Columbus running their offices. So I went to the Northern Lights office. I'll never forget the name of it, Northern Lights. And I got on my suit. Like I only had 2 suits back then, by the way. I had on 1 of 2 suits, and I walked in. I was so excited. And I see the security guard there, and I said, "Hi, my name is Donna Murray Brown. I'm going to be the new manager here." And just to give you some context, the security guard was an African-American male. And to see him look at me and the smile on his face to say, "Oh my gosh, you're Donna Murray." I say, "Yeah, I'm Donna Murray from the MBD and I'm here. I'm gonna get started. Can you introduce me?" He said, "I'm gonna introduce you to our assistant manager," because they didn't have a manager. That was going to be me, to the assistant manager, Debbie. I go meet Debbie. I say, "Hi, Debbie, I'm Donna Murray Brown." Oh, well, excuse me, I'm Donna Murray. And I'm here to, I'm going to be leading here. I'm so excited to meet you. And she says, "You're Donna?" I said, "Yeah, I'm Donna Murray." And she said, I'll be right back. I need to make a call." So she disappears. It was kind of strange. So I stand there talking to the security guard. We're laughing and talking and building rapport with one another. And I can hear her talking to someone, and she says, "She's Black. Did you know she was Black?" Said, "She's talking about me." So I'm like listening. So she comes out and she said, "We just called Sharon, our regional director. She's going to come here because we thought you would be somebody different." And I said, "Well, what does that mean?" I knew what she meant, but I wanted her to say it to my face. And she didn't. She just said, "We just thought things were going to be different. We thought things were going to be different." So then she went back behind the teller line and she told them, and they were whispering, but not so much where I couldn't hear them, saying, "That's going to be our new manager." And they're like, "She's Black?" I'm like, "I'm standing right here." So they marched around. There was no one in the bank, thank goodness. They marched around from behind the teller line, came in and said, "We can't work for you because you're Black. So I don't know what this is about. We thought from your name that you were Irish or Scottish or something. We had no idea that you were Black. So we're just going to be straight with you." So this is my team talking to me about me, right? I was so nervous. I was so young. And they said they refused to work until Sharon, the regional manager, got there. So if anybody's been in banking, you can close the bank down if you act like it was a robbery. So that's what I did. There's certain techniques I can't share with you, but you close the branch down, you put a sign on the door, and the sign it was closed. So Sharon came, and when she came, I opened the door and she explained to me they didn't know I was Black. Like, it was a really big conversation about me being Black, which was interesting. But to say the least, I stayed there. They ended up being part of my team with the exception of Judy. I don't remember Judy's last name, but Judy came back after the next day and said her husband wouldn't allow her to work for a Black woman. So she would no longer be able to work for me. But there was a happy ending to that story in that we all famously loved each other after a while. They got to know me as a person. Our branch went up to one of the highest, like in the top 3 for production, and it was great. However, I decided that I was going to be a mother, but I wasn't going to be married. So guess what? All the stereotypes about me being a Black woman and having babies, not baby, but babies, were put into my face in terms of what people felt about me. So I want to show you that when I was pregnant, really, really large right there, I was on track to be like a regional director. Well, as much as my stomach got bigger, as much as I was shunned by everyone at the bank because I wasn't married and because I was a Black woman. And these are things that were shared with me. However, as you can see, that bundle of joy, how could you refuse that bundle of joy, Dominique? She's amazing, right? And I was still able to, be a mother. And what I decided to do was come back to Detroit. And I decided at that moment that I would still be in banking. I would work really hard, but I was going to work for a Black bank. And that's what I did. And that's what you see me working. And I was the senior most person. I reported to the president and the majority owner of the bank. And I believe that is where I built the network that has made me successful today. So again, I went back to my kind, if you use that same language as my gym teacher, and I was nourished and I developed my business acumen as well as my executive, I think, presence and all that comes with being a leader from a Black bank called First Independence Bank in Detroit. So here's my motherhood journey. I was a single parent and decidedly so. There was Dominique, and I went to her school for all her birthday parties, for every birthday she had. And to others, probably the way that they thought about me back at the bank in Ohio. Dominique is also a college graduate, second generation college graduate. She also went to a historically Black college and university. She went to Howard University, which in the Black community, they call it the Black Harvard because it's such a wonderful school and it offers such a wonderful education. I'm also proud to say that my daughter decided to follow my footsteps, and she also got her graduate degree in 2020 as well. So we both got our graduate degrees together, and we will be taking our cap and gown pictures together soon. Stay tuned for those. And then on the last picture over here with my Detroit earrings, having some Detroit pride, is Mother's Day. I am very proud of my career in banking, which was amazing, even though there were some bumps in the road, but I'm most proud of the journey of my motherhood and being a mother to Dominique, while being able to climb the corporate ladder and then ultimately coming into the nonprofit sector. So this is sort of funny. If you look at here, what do you see? You can be honest. You can be honest with me. You see different hairstyles, don't you? Like, my look has just changed. So what's interesting is coming into this as a Black leader, you know, right here, if you can see where my cursor is, I was wearing my hair. I was, you know, like the actual true condition of what my hair is. And I had all these hopes and dreams, lots of confidence. And coming to Michigan Nonprofit Association, was the first woman to lead the organization. Of course, first Black woman, because I was the first Black woman to lead M&A. And I wanted to show up like who I am. But there was something about what I walked into in terms of how I imagined what I would do as a leader. There were lots of changes, wholesale changes that I wanted to make at the organization, because I knew that those changes were necessary for us to be able to serve the nonprofit sector. But these were going to be painful changes. And I will tell you, I got talked about really, really bad when there were programs that I said, you know, they're not as impactful anymore. We're not going to do those. There are things that we're not going to do anymore. There are people that actually are not necessarily the talent. They're going to come along for this ride. That's like the hardest work. But I honestly believe if I weren't a woman and if I weren't Black, I wouldn't have been talked about as bad. I don't know that to be true, but I know about from the context of my experience that it was highly possible that me making some of those moves were considered aggressive, not assertive, not strategic the way that I positioned it, but they were seemingly different. That's the way I felt. Those are remarks that I got back. So these are factual in that regard. So I tried to change myself. I'll be honest with you. My staff is hearing this for the first time, so this is making me super nervous. But I tried to assimilate. I assimilated with my hair and my look. I wanted to be more approachable. I wanted to be what people thought I should be in this role. That's a first. I wanted people to be proud of me. I wanted to be a trailblazer. I had all of these things I was carrying with me. And the way that I could actually feel like I could make that assimilation and make that successful move was my look. I worked hard to lose weight, which I need to do anyway, that I needed to do. But I also wanted to make my look be something. And that was for years. And then last year, just before the pandemic, it's something about when you're not being your authentic self that just nags at your spirit and at your soul. I don't care who you are, at least if you have feelings, it does. And I just started moving in that direction, And the pandemic placed us in isolation where I had to sit with myself and say, is this who I am? And the answer is no, this is who I am. I am strategic. I am super assertive. I am, I think, intelligent. I do think I know what I'm doing. I do think there's a lot of things I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm brave and courageous enough to just do them and assemble the right talent to get things done. And I can look like the person that you see today, and that's far on my right, maybe your left. And that's who I am. And I'm super excited to be in that. But in between that was a lot of pain. In between that was imposter syndrome, like I don't deserve to be here. So let me look like what I think I need to look like, all kinds of things. These are things, and the Black community, the Black leaders, Black women are not monolithic. But generally speaking, I think the context I'm providing you, this general context is typical for a lot of my friends anyway, that they assimilate and the pain that goes behind that. And it shows up maybe differently. For me, it showed up in my hair. I know that's strange, isn't it? But that's true. So I provided you with a lot of context. I provided you with some stories that I think were important, just so you know, like, how did it start? What kind of context did I grow up in? How do I get to be me? And what does me mean? However, I think it's important to layer on facts, content, substance, beyond the stories that I share with you. And so according to the Global Nonprofit Catalyst report, you can see that people of color, Black women, still account for 4.1% of total management positions in the United States. Asian women is even lower. These are issues here. 32.8% are white women, but then if you just layer off, take the race off of it, it just shows you still we have a preponderance of men that are leading, right? So these are issues that are interwoven. And so people say, well, Donna, what you said is just normal. I'm a white woman, I go through the same thing. Yep, you sure do. However, when you layer over race on top of that, that intersection of race and gender, it exacerbates some of the common things that we all experience, right? And so that's what I want to really bring forward to you, is that all of that matters. Don't be dismissive of that. It all matters. And so I have really, because I'm the first Black woman to lead Michigan Nonprofit Association, I've been really interested in what it means to be a Black woman in leading. So being asked to talk about that today was right up my alley. I'm doing research on that. And so building movement projects, Race to Lead report, if you haven't seen that, I encourage you to see it. I know to read it. The Race to Lead report looked at people of color leaders, but then they honed in on women of color. And so it provides you with a lot of information around what it means. And one of the things is that Black women, they actually want to lead. So if you thought they don't want to lead, the studies say they want to lead. They just aren't getting the opportunities. And guess what? They report being very hyper visible. They get ignored. They're highly educated, right? It's not like they're not educated. They are highly educated. It's still, the advancement is still slow for them. But I want to talk a little bit about the hypervisibility, because for me, when I became most hyper visible about me being a Black woman leading, and guess what, not just being a Black woman leading, but a Black woman leading a predominantly white organization, because the people who are part of my team are not, they don't look like me. Slowly but surely, we're diversifying our team, but by and large, I have white people working at my organization as a Black leader, Black woman leader. And so I have to say, when the pandemic, happened and I was in isolation, sitting with myself as we're working remotely, when the murder of George Floyd happened, why it was riveting for all of us, for me, it was the moment in time I said, I have to be me, because my life is short. Everyone's life is short. But for me, it was up and close and personal about what all the experiences, some of which I shared with you, but I have many more that I could share about what it means to be Black and being a woman. And I felt so hyper visible. For the first time in my organization, when I came in 2009, when I became the president and CEO in 2013, I have to admit, I didn't really feel like I was a Black woman leading. When George Floyd died, he was murdered, I felt like Black woman leading. So much so that when there were all kinds of statements that organizations were making about what they were going to do, how they were going to course correct, it was in that moment and in the wisdom of my team that they recognized that I had my own statement about this. And I made my statement, Donna Murray Brown statement, and then the organization had its statement. We had two statements that went out about what it meant. And that hypervisibility is stunning, and that it's a lot of burden, and you don't know how to process it. I'm still learning how to process that. Sponsorship compared to mentorship. Mentorship is great. I have tons of mentors, but I'm not sure how many people talk about me in good favor in the rooms that I'm not in. How many people say, I know Donna Murray Brown, I know the work she can do in closed rooms when people are talking about how to advance someone. Black women leaders need sponsors. They need mentors, but they really need sponsorship. There is a sense of the glass cliff phenomenon. I don't know if you know what that means, but it's different from the glass ceiling. It means that you as a Black woman, you finally get a chance to lead. Yes, you've been asked to lead. How exciting is that? But the organization that you've been asked to lead is on its last leg, doesn't have any money, doesn't have great talent, has all kinds of need for it to be revamped. And you were selected to be the person to do that. And it's make it or break it. And I can't tell you how many countless times I mentor and sponsor a lot of Black women. And that's the experience that they had. I didn't know. When I became the president and CEO, we only had this much money in the bank. And I didn't know how I was going to make it. Those are the opportunities that many Black women actually get when they finally get a chance to be leaders. And so also for me, bold leadership and risk-taking leadership, like I expressed to you when I became the president and CEO in 2013, I was stereotyped by some people as being angry, the angry Black woman. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm not angry. Now I'm angry because you're saying I'm angry, but I wasn't angry before. I am just trying to be strategic and the best leader that I can be. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with the packaging that I came in and how people perceive that? So what I like for you to consider is that Black women do want to be leaders and they make good leaders. They do. It's proven, all kinds of facts to demonstrate, all kinds of studies from McKinsey to the Black Movement Project to many more, because they're the context of their life. They're empathetic, they are educated, and their lived experience is priceless as it relates to how to mitigate some of these wicked problems that we're facing. And they also have a long history of being leaders. If you look at Black history leaders, you know, everyone knows about Harriet Tubman. Thinking about her and thinking about how courageous she was and what she did, there are many, many, countless others after her and even before her. So thinking about leadership exists in their bones and our DNA. And Black women are typically motivated by the desire to provide positive influence over the company's culture or to be role models and mentors for people of color. I can tell you that's what my life is right now. I mentor at least 25 to 30 women already, Black women leaders. They consider me a role model. Part of what my platform of being president and CEO at M&A was around the culture. I'm not saying I get it right all the time, but that was what I was leaning into. And that's my life. I'd like you to consider that that's an opportunity for you to maybe think differently around who Black women leaders can be and who they are. So here is how my Black women leadership is showing up at M&A. And so it's showing up in our 10-year goals. Yes, that's right. We have 10-year goals or a 10-year target. And I am not so sure if I were not leading the organization, would we even have some of these goals? So I'll read them out loud. I know you can read them, but I want to just read them out loud. Making an impact in marginalized communities, like the community where I grew up. Marginalized communities resulting in increased civic engagement in important democracy issues. Yes, my family, my neighbors, some of them voted, some of them didn't, because they didn't think that they mattered. They didn't think that their vote counted, and they didn't want to complete the census because they felt that that was an invasion. They didn't recognize how things work. I would like to mitigate that through education, through awareness, and we're doing those things. Michigan's nonprofit sector is valued and a legitimate business partner in the state's economy and has strong public-private partnership relationships. So with this, many nonprofit organizations, by and large, are smaller. And the smaller they are, the more you're going to see if there are any leaders of color leading, that's where they are. I would really want to make certain that the value that they bring is that they are considered as legitimate business partners, both large and small. And so this is something that we're looking toward for 10 years. Transformational policy changes resulting in equitable access to capital and resources for nonprofits, particularly those operating at the margins, like those smaller ones, the ones that are helping those communities of color. And typically, in most cases, some smaller those organizations are very low budgets, they're operating in the margins, and they're typically people of color. And also increase the number of leaders so that nonprofit leadership represents the populations they serve. So it doesn't have to just be the small ones. City of Detroit, by example, Saginaw, Flint, Benton Harbor, even Grand Rapids in some areas, there are places all over the city, all over the state that have populations that where the people who are serving as nonprofit leaders, they don't look like them. There's opportunity there is what I'm suggesting. And that's what we're thinking about, helping the nonprofit sector to be and to look like in the next 10 years. So with that, I am going to open it up to have some questions and some dialogue with you. And I'm going to stop sharing, but I'm going to let you kind of marinate on that new Donna Murray look, well, the old Donna Murray look. And then I'll stop sharing and we can talk. I hope you got some value out of that.
Yes, thank you so much, Donna, for giving us the context and the stories. Yeah, it helped me have a better understanding. And so I really appreciate you sharing that and also what the Michigan Nonprofit Association is doing. We did have a couple of questions actually come in prior to the meeting.
Great.
So one of them that I wanted to ask you, and I think it's especially important, is just even how do we begin the conversation if it isn't already happening around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and especially if it's needed from maybe the bottom up, where someone that is not in a leadership role sees the need. What kind of things do you suggest organizations do, and how do they work through that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that there's like no one answer to that, because the culture of the organization really, really determines what might be the best strategy for that. So assuming that the culture of the organization is willing to listen to every level of the organization, that's like the first step there. Assuming that that is the case, I think bringing it to the leader is very, very important. I do think that leadership at the top of the house, the actual leader of the organization, is important that they embrace diversity, equity, inclusion, because they set the tone and culture for the organization. So I think that's important. And oftentimes I've seen, and this has happened to me even at the bank, a story I didn't share with you, is that if you have a person of color that brings that forward, there's quite a bit of burden. So there's high interest for a person of color to say, this is what we should be thinking about. But then there's a lot of burden to carry that for the organization. And so sometimes a person of color is conflicted by this. They say, I want you to think about this. I want to advance this as part of our organization. And then, the leader says, okay, then you can do it. And then they say, okay, because I believe in this. But what it does, it actually creates undue burden for that person, because they may not have the power within the organization to affect change on their own, and to isolate them, or to keep that as a body of work for them that is not embraced by the full organization, puts another bit of stress on them. So I do advise that you don't look at the person of color within your organization to lead that. You don't look for, sometimes you say, well, let me give them a leadership opportunity and let them lead this. They have to do it in tandem with the top of the house to make certain that they have the ability to be able to make the change that you all want to see. And so, I'll give you a quick example. Is when I was at the bank, and I was charged of working with the NAACP for their 10,000 seat dinner that they have in Detroit. And it was $150,000 to be a sponsor for that. And we have been giving money to lots of other ethnic and racial group associations and organizations. But when it came time to this, everyone on the senior management team, of which I was a part of, said, Donna, can you tell me what do they do? And so I explained what they did. Well, why should we give them $150,000? Well, because we gave it to this organization and this organization. Why is that different? And so I had to explain so much as to why we were doing a routine, sponsorship. But they looked at me to be, representative of all Blacks, which is not possible. It's not possible. And so, and always asking for my opinion. My opinion is based on my experience alone, which is why I gave you my context, because I think it's important. The first thing is to understand everyone's context. The second piece of it also is there's so much power in vulnerability. So how you have the conversation is to show up vulnerable, which is scary, but true. So I know I said a lot, but it really depends on the organization and who can come forward. But I beg you to be more creative about what that looks like, and not just putting that responsibility on a person of color to advance that.
Thank you. Feel free, if anyone would like to pose a question, to simply unmute yourself and ask a question, or you can type it into the chat as well. I had another question that I wanted to share. Besides our own organization and sharing salary information and job postings, what can we do to encourage transparency in compensation in order to be more equitable?
Yeah, I mean, that was something, even for my own organization, which is super traditional, had a hard time, we don't want to do this. It was about budgetary issues and all kinds of things. Honestly, I think that's distraction. Why can't you put the range out there? And Kevin Dean, that is my counterpart in Tennessee, he's just an amazing person. And he was one of the first people who started doing that and being transparent with that. And so I encourage nonprofits who are looking for talent to do that. The transparency is important, but more importantly, reports and studies have shown when you don't do that, and it's a person of color that actually gets the role, they actually tend to be on the lower end of whatever scale range that you had. And so I think that is a really great step for not only transparency, but also giving people the opportunity to make an educated and informed choice about whether or not they want to work at your organization. And you've robbed a person of that when you don't do that. Mm. And it's almost arrogant, I think, to do that, and that people deserve to understand, where they're working and how much they can be paid, and how that impacts their family and their personal choices. So I also think that it's just important to be able to provide that.
Thank you. One of the things that struck me in your presentation was you mentioned kind of the being more than a mentor, but in fact being a sponsor. Can you tell me a little bit more about the differences, and then also what can someone that wants to really take the step into sponsorship versus mentorship do? What's maybe some of the first steps that they can take?
Yeah, so I have some sponsors, and interestingly enough, my sponsors are 70 and 74 white males. They are my sponsors. And they chose me, and I chose them right back. They're awesome. And they advocate for me in rooms that they are only in. That's the difference. It's a very slim difference. Because, so for instance, if they're, I can tell you when I started as a president and CEO, I made a lot of changes. And these are necessary changes literally, when I opened the books and saw our numbers and saw where we could be headed if we didn't make some changes, it would have been dire for us, right? And it was just a lot of factors for that, that contributed to that. And people could talk about me in a room and say, I can't believe she's getting rid of this program. But my sponsor would say, wait a second, I know Donna, she operates with integrity, she's being strategic. Have you considered that? A mentor doesn't have to do that, and probably won't do that. That's a private conversation that you have with them. They give you advice and they mentor you, and they model the way. But will they stand up for you when someone else isn't in a room that you're not in? That's the difference. Mm-hmm. So I have people in my life that do that. And that's been important to me. Or if there was a job, they may not ever have had access to that, because we also have challenges with our search firms. We also have challenges with, just our HR practices and how we attract talent in and of itself. Mm-hmm. And so we may not even have an opportunity to actually work at some of these places, these wonderful places. And someone can say, have you considered Donna Murray Brown? A mentor may not do that, but a sponsor will. Mm-hmm. And so it's about helping to advance. It's about standing up for a person. It's about being an advocate and a champion for that person, even when they're not there and in the room. Mm-hmm. So the relationship is based on integrity, transparency, and trust. Mm-hmm.
So what would be maybe a practical way that I could engage in that space? Just thinking about even my sphere of influence, just from my personal, but hopefully it would be helpful for others to kind of understand. Like what are some ways that I can activate?
So I think it kind of, in my opinion, it starts with building the trust, and that actually can happen through decidedly being a mentor. So developing those relationships, right? Because it's hard to be a sponsor for someone you don't know. And so I think it's important. And what I've done is I've really, I have to manage myself on this, but I've really opened my door to say, if you have a question about something or you're troubled about something, feel free to give me a call. And I have, like I said, about 25 people who do that. That's a lot. And so I spend a lot of time with people. And quite frankly, I'll be honest with you, in this context, they're not all Black women. I actually mentor women, period. Majority of them are Black women, but I just understand what it means to be a woman leader, and I support women leadership. And so I will mentor them. And as things come up, they'll tell me what their hopes and dreams are. And as a president and CEO of M&A, I can't tell you how many search firms, we're looking for the best candidate, can you help us, emails and calls that I get. And then I know these people, I know them, I have their resumes, and I can forward them off to, and I will do that. If I know them. If I don't know, or they've made an impression on me, and I said, this is a good leader, how can I help them get where they want? And particularly, I love helping leaders stay in the nonprofit sector if I can, be so, because I want to make sure that we have really great leaders in the nonprofit sector. We do already, but I want to keep them and I add more to them. So that's how you do it, is starting those relationships. And sometimes it happens through mentorship programs. I think that's a really good way to do it. If that's not available to you, then there's probably a little bit more work in trying to be in those spaces where people are that you want to mentor, to build those relationships. Pace yourself. Don't do 25, maybe do 2, and pace yourself and develop that and build upon that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think it is so hard? A question that came in the chat. Why do you think it is so hard for Black women to find mentors?
I think I mean, honestly, I don't want to say we're the most misunderstood, but we're a lot misunderstood. And so I think, that angry Black woman kind of persona is real for some folks. Some folks feel, they're intimidating, and all of those things I don't think are true. Obviously, because I'm a Black woman, I don't think that's true about me. But I think a lot of it is just access. And biases and stereotypes and things like that do get in the way, and which is why I think it's so important. And I feel like I'm so dedicated to bringing people of color and people that can lead, that represent communities across our state, are engaged in this and in this work, and it's so important. So I think if it's a decision for a person to go after people and to go after talent and to keep them. But I will say that I just think that it is a notion of access, and really we need programs. Those are good, but we just need people to just do it. It's like Nike said, just do it. Yeah. Just pick one and do it, And again, while I know that this is in context of Black women, I just think that this applies to people of color, younger people, older people, whatever the case may be, people. There's inequities in just every sense of the word. Obviously, a lot has been showing up as it relates to race, and that's valid. But I just think people should start somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's easier than you think, really.
Yeah. And I think too, leaning into, the uncomfortableness of it, right? Because that's where we grow. And yeah. Dr. Thorne, Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's just a ton of power in being vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times you are robbing yourself of experiences when you don't allow yourself to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And that's just been the way I live my life. And I'm not going to say you don't get hurt.
Right.
You will. But I'm going to say the reward is so much better. Mm-hmm. It's worth the risk.
Dr. Thorne, did I see you raise your hand? Did you have a question?
Yes, I have a comment, and then I have a question. First of all, Donna, you look good.
And I'm gonna tape you. I'm gonna just keep playing that part of the tape.
Okay.
I'm teasing you. It's so good to see you. It's so good to see you.
Well, thank you so much, and I just appreciate your journey, and it was good. It's good sometimes to sit back and reflect and hear someone else's journey and then also to reflect on your own journey. And I know we all have a journey and we all have a story. What we don't do is we don't share it enough. And so I appreciate you for reminding us that we need to do that. But I want to just shift the conversation now. Now, Renee knows me. I like to stir the pot up, so, we are all women, and we are in leadership roles. Give us some tips on self-care. I've been reading a lot and studying a lot about self-care and women who are in leadership role. I know I need to be reminded that I need to take care of Mamie. So what are some tips and strategies that you have that you can pass on to us on how to take care of ourselves, and then also how to reach out to our neighbor? And yeah, we've been in this pandemic. Some of us, we see each other on Zoom, but we can't hug in personally like we used to or shake hands. And so I know you have some tips and some strategies for women supporting each other,
Yes, I know the time is moving fast, so I'm going to be really quick and say, thank you for the question. And so there's a book by Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith, and it's called Sacred Rest. And sacred rest is really the notion that there are 7 areas where people can get rest. And so for me to say, go get a massage, go walk in the park, that is forms of self-care. But what it may not do is take care of the energy depletion that you have in your life. So what it means for you, it may be totally different. You might need to go back to painting, let's say, because you used to paint when you were younger, and that brought you joy and it brought you rest. Rest does not mean that you have to be unconscious. Certainly it does mean sleep, but it also means the energy depletion. And so figuring out where your energy depletion is, or where you pull energy in and it brings you joy, that's self-care. So I'm practicing exploring those things for me. I don't know all of those things that bring me rest, but I do know that part of it was, I needed to sleep, but a lot of it was my energy, because I'm an introvert. Like, for instance, talking to you right now, I am going to be tired after this. I am tired now. Doesn't mean that it doesn't bring me joy. It just depletes my energy. So I have to know that about myself, so then I can do the rest that I need to be able to come back. That's Donna's rest. That's Donna's self-care. I didn't know that that was what I needed. So you have to know what you need. And it doesn't mean that you have to get more sleep or get a massage or go on a trip. It could mean those things, but it's very personal to who you are. Does that make sense? And as far as your friend, I say you need to write personal notes. Send a note to your friend of encouragement in this isolation. Is nothing like snail mail that'll bring joy to your heart when you open that up and you get a message from someone saying, I just, sent this because I care about you, because I love you, because you're on my mind. I've been getting those from friends and family, and that's made a difference to me. And that also, when someone else cares about you as well, and you get that signal, it also makes you feel that you should be taking care of yourself or caring for others. Caring for others makes you want to care for yourself too. It makes you want to reciprocate that. It brings that to your consciousness.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Donna, do you have just a few more minutes?
I'm good. Yeah, I am good. Yes.
One of the questions that I had, and just hearing about your past and that first experience that you had with the bank, how many years ago was that? And also, has there been any reconciliation with any of those colleagues? And if so, how did that happen?
For the bank, that was the one where they quit on me, the whole staff. That was like 89, 90. It was not too long ago. Yeah, I guess I could figure that out. I knew someone was going to ask me. The best someone's going to ask me when that happened, and I'm like, no one's going to ask me.
Right. It's
how is it? No, but it was like in the, I think it was early 90s. It was before my daughter was born. that she was born in 95. So it was probably 1990, 1991 or so.
And then has there been reconciliation with any of those colleagues? And
No, let me tell you something. Sharon and Jerry, the two main culprits, all passed away.
okay.
And suddenly, like within the year after that happened,
Oh,
Mm.
wow.
from
Wow.
illness. And I was so devastated because I wanted them to see that I was a good leader.
Yeah.
I wanted to prove to them. It was weird. It was a weird dynamic that I wanted to prove to them something. But yeah, they didn't get a chance to see what kind of leader I was at that in Columbus. They didn't live to see it. Literally didn't live to see it.
Mm. And how about any of those other really tough stories that you shared with us? Were there any moments of reconciliation at all? No. No.
None, zero. Which is what that's what came out when George Floyd's murder took place, was a lot of pain that I felt that I didn't recognize, that I was holding on to.
Yeah.
So it may be like a lot of different things for a lot of people, but for me it was like, it just, no matter how I wear my hair, no matter how much education I get, no matter what, I could die. I could die for being me, and there's nothing I can do about that. That's how I felt. And I felt like I've always been reminded of that in some way. No matter what, I've always get a little prick of a reminder of who the world sees I am.
Mhm.
But it's changing. It's changing.
So
I'm hopeful.
what do you suggest for someone like me that is a white woman of privilege to be able to kind of step out and support and love and walk hand in hand with you and others that are going through this?
I think authenticity is important. I think you starting with friends and asking friends who you trust and have you can have a conversation with. I think learning as much as you can. That's what I do. I try to learn about things that I don't know very much about by either talking to people or reading.
Mhm.
Literally, I read between like 4 a.m. to like 6 a.m. and then I'm like, oh my God, gotta get ready to do whatever. But I read so much. I actually read most about like leadership, what it means to be in the nonprofit sector, because remember, I'm a banker. I was a 22-year banker. I was not a 22-year nonprofit person. So there are a lot of things around nonprofit I just don't know. I'm like, what do they mean by this? So I look these things up. And so I think the same thing for, what do they mean by equity? Read up all the things that you can about that, but don't go to your usual suspects. Hear from a person of color, or don't necessarily stay in the academia part of it. Listen to lived and real experiences, which I thought it was important for me to bring my lived experience for you, just a taste of it,
Mhm.
because what it does is I'm hoping that it humanized me beyond, if you've never met me before, it humanized me, and you could see yourself in that, and then you could, help you kind of see how I'm a normal person that had some abnormal and unfortunate circumstances, but we all have in different ways. Mine were just rooted in racism and maybe even sexism. It's hard to say.
So what are some other ways?
Oh, Joan. I'm sorry. Joan was going to say, and Joan, I don't know if you want to take yourself off mute, because you've done some really good work around this, similar to what Emily was asking. Did you want to share? I know you're on mute. Don't want to put you on the spot, but I know you've done some great work on it.
Oh, no, I'm happy to share. I was just, when you said what can be done as a white woman of privilege, and I just put in the chat, there are a number of seminars and trainings, such as the one that I took recently, offered by GVSU's Equity and Inclusion Institute. And it's called Increasing Accountability, White Women Engaging in White Consciousness and Anti-White Supremacy Work. And it's a cohort of white women that are doing the work that we need to do as white people, and not relying on our colleagues and friends to always show us the way. And so I found it very enlightening. And in fact, at M&A, we're kind of doing a similar program with the white women at our organization. We formed a cohort, and we're using those same resources to learn more about our biases, our privilege, white fragility, white tears, and all the other things that you will learn about if you take the classes. I highly recommend it.
Thank you, Joan. That's super helpful. I really appreciate that.
Let me just say too, why I think, I love that my team's able to do that. Well, I will just share with you, when I was at the bank, if there were more than two Black people together, we were scared to death because it felt like people felt like we were conspiring or doing something, you know what I mean? And I'm like, no, you're just trying to be with people who can help you grow, right? And so this is just a prime example of, as a Black leader in my organization, I encourage Joan and other white women in my organization to get together and learn and grow. Like, that's what that's about. Nobody's trying to, if they're trying to get rid of me, that's cool too, but I don't think that's the case, right? So why would I think of that being the reason or the motivation for them getting together? I think we just need to be more vulnerable and more transparent. I think it's just better that way, in my opinion.
Yeah, and create spaces for those conversations to happen, right? Because if you don't.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There was a question, I think, that came in. What did you call the syndrome of when one finally gets the CEO position and the organization needs to be fixed?
Oh yeah, that's a cliff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I did that. Okay.
And I think Tammy responded to that too.
Just a couple of other questions that we had come in prior to. One is, how do we encourage more people of color to join nonprofit boards? And I think kind of to add on to that question too, where it's not a form of tokenism either, because I think that a lot of times happens where, yeah, you want to have a diverse board. And so you choose someone because of their skin color, which is not okay either. And so can you talk us through ways to combat that and how to encourage and get to a better space there?
Well, I think this is one probably a criticism I have for the philanthropic sector overall, and not just the philanthropic sector, the corporate sector as well, is that they're, especially, with George Floyd, there was this knee-jerk reaction, right? But even prior to that, if you remember, lots of foundations were asking how many people of color or how many Black people or how many women were on your board. Like, those were stats. People were really interested in diversity from a numbers perspective and not so much about what that meant. And so people just responded to that to get the people they needed to be able to answer the questions that were being asked of them so they can get the funding that they need to do their work. So the motivation was wrong. And so, yes, you had tokenism that was a result of that. But I think that we need to do the work. And, in a perfect world, you say, do the work and then bring the person on. I don't know we have time for that. I think you can do the work and be particularly transparent to say, we are doing the work, and give them the choice as to whether or not they want to be part of this. That's a different approach, because it's like, you need to do the work and you need their thought partnership and leadership to be able to have diversity of thought, but be very transparent to say, listen, we are a hot mess, or listen, we're not the hot mess status anymore. We're moving, we're in an intermediate hot mess now, we're advanced, whatever the case may be, but let them know so they can make their choices. And I think what we do is try to, disguise, oh, we're doing well, we want you and all that. And then when you get on there, you recognize, you're always interrupted when you're trying to speak. No one's reaching out to you like they do others. It's just all kinds of things can happen. So yes, we need more people of color on boards, but yes, we need those boards and those organizations to understand what it means to do that. But we need to be truthful about where we are in our journey and let them make the choice prior to you showing them all the glitziness of it, show them the ugliness of it, and let them decide whether or not they want to spend their energy and thought leadership and partnership with you. Not bring them in and extract everything that you can from them without, truly letting them be a thought partner and leader at your table.
Yeah, I love that. And invite them in and share with them the messiness, because at the end of the day, we're all learning and growing, and it just goes to that vulnerability piece again too. So One last question that I had come in prior to, and feel free at the end if there's any others that want to unmute themselves, but I know you recommended a couple of different resources to look into the Building Movement Project's Race to Lead.
Yes.
And I think that was actually added into the chat.
Mhm.
And we can provide that when we send out this recording too. But is there any other recommended resources, books, articles, talks, film that has really been integral to your focus in this area, and also things that resources that you would just encourage each of us to kind of dig into and look more into?
I like to, not at the readiness of my mind right now, other than what's been shared. I really think what Tammy put in the chat provides you with a lot of context and research and studies. But I do think that there's opportunities to learn more from people themselves, like get behind those numbers, hear those stories. So I'm working with a group in Detroit. And they're actually a group of intermediaries. It happened as a result of the pandemic, and that we all just said, how are you doing? How are you doing? How are you doing? And we just said, let's just connect with one another and let's put our resources together so we can help the nonprofit sector in Southeastern Michigan. What happened organically with that conversation was we looked up on a Zoom meeting, we're all talking, and it's 5 of us, and we recognize we're all women of color. We're all women and we're women of color. Like, it really didn't occur to us till we looked at it and said, look at this. So we created this Transcending Solidarity Collective. So it is our intermediary work serving nonprofits, but it's also from the perspective of us being women of color and what that means. So we're doing a lot of work and putting out perspective and understanding from the 5 of us into the world. We've taken our show on the road, if you will, by being part of the Independent Sectors Conference and being asked again to be part of their conference this year too. We've been writing, and one of the things that we're working on that actually just popped on my screen, and I almost would have forgotten about it, is we're doing some studying around rest and liberation for people of color, and particularly women of color, because women have a lot of roles that we fill already as women. It's just so much, just we have a lot of roles that we do as women. And as I mentioned, if you layer on race, there's just a lot of energy that's expended. And this notion of rest and liberation in the form of a sabbatical is what we're looking at. And so once we have the research done, it's we're hoping to get the balance of our research funded by a foundation who has taken some interest in Detroit around this work. And then we'll provide a report, and that report will share with you the voices that you won't hear behind a study, right? So that's one thing. Another body of work that M&A is doing in partnership, we're leading, but we're working with the Johnson Center and Data Driven Detroit. We are doing a Black, Indigenous, and people of color census to find out who's leading, what's the state of leadership in Michigan's nonprofit sector from a race perspective. And the reason why that occurred is because 1, we didn't have the data, and 2, there were so many organizations after the murder of George Floyd that there were people saying, Donna, can you tell me, are there any Black-led organizations I can put my money into? I want to partner. I want to get to know them. Can you tell me? And it recurred to me, yeah, I know a lot of them, and they're all my friends. So how different am I of sharing that rich information and resource to my friends as anybody else? I need to have it needs to be accessible to everybody. So I said, you know what? I need to do a census. I need to know what's out there. So it's underway right now. And out of that, it won't be a Black list. Literally, it won't be a Black list. And it's about, and the principle is do no harm by putting someone listed here. We don't want to harm them. What we want to do is understand what their needs are, want to understand what their journeys are, want to understand who they are with these organizations and what communities they are in, and learning more about the state of leadership in Michigan in the nonprofit sector. So that work will be able to be helpful too, because then you can look in your neighborhood and say, okay, I see this is the context of my neighborhood from a leadership perspective, who's leading. And so that's going to be about a 12-month project, and that's part of it. And then lastly, I would be remiss, because I'm now on the Candid GuideStar, or GuideStar Candid is really just Candid board. And Candid is asking for nonprofits, as you input your information on your GuideStar profile, that you actually put your demographic information on there. So while we're doing our report is kind of just the beginning to give you some insight, but it's static. And as you can imagine, some people are leaving their organizations, new people are coming, so things are changing, but your GuideStar profile can be a way to keep that information updated, if you will, fresh. So those are things where you can get data, but then also get those stories. And so, I say, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm just teasing. I don't put anything on Twitter. I need to do better. Tammy probably, she's probably cringing right now, but I do put some of these things on my public Facebook page, and you're welcome. It's under Donna Murray Brown on Facebook. And then you can find out some other things too, and find more about the Transcending Solidarity Collective and all kinds of work that M&A is doing, I'm doing. So maybe that can be helpful too, articles and all kinds of information.
Very cool. And to get to M&A's resources too, the website and maybe the way to sign up for, you guys have an e-newsletter, don't you, that you guys publish that provides some
Yes.
highlights?
We do. And it is, there's a lot of information. We have our COVID-19 website too, that has some of this information around the collective, because a lot of it, the viewpoint and understanding was clear because of the pandemic. And so, so you can find some of those things also on our COVID-19 page.
Thanks, Tammy, for putting it on the chat, Donna's Facebook page, and then the M&A response. So
He's on it.
yes, good to have such great team members.
Yeah.
Well, is there any other questions that we had from our audience today? Any other ones that came in the chat that I may have missed? Okay. Well, Donna, did you want to make any last summary points or anything?
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much again. Everyone is extremely busy. Mental health and self-care and all those things are so important, especially now because we seem to be on a hamster wheel that none of us can ever get off of. And so for you to get off the hamster wheel for this short time to spend with me, I am humbled. I am extremely humbled by that, because you could be doing anything. But you decided to be here with me. So I'm grateful for that. And I'm so grateful for the Association of Fundraising Professionals and your commitment to the philosophies around IDEA. And just I'm grateful to be maybe your inaugural speaker for continued conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I would love to come back and be a part of other conversations that you might have. And I look forward to helping any of you. If you decide, I think I put my contact information in there, decide if you would like to, to seek my advice or opinion on something, I'm here to serve and gladly, and feel like it's a privilege to do so. So thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much for giving us your time and your talent and being vulnerable with us and creating the space for us to have the conversation. And I am excited about what this means for our chapter and what action we can take from this. And I know we're going to have you back. I really appreciate everything though, Donna, and feel like we were able to connect even more. Every time I see you, I feel like it's really sweet, but getting some of those stories has been really incredible. So highlight of my week.
Oh, good. Okay.
But in honor too of our professions, we do want to donate $100 from the AFP Mid-Michigan Chapter. So I'll loop in with you and find out where you'd like us to donate in your honor.
Oh, how nice.
But thank you again for coming over to the nonprofit side too. I always joke with everyone that's on the corporate side that comes to the nonprofit side that you're on the bright side now.
Yes.
But corporate side does incredible things too. But
True.
We are happy to have you leading the charge for Michigan nonprofits, and yeah, we look forward to continued conversations.
Thank
And
you,
then
Emily.
yes. Well, thank you. And just as a reminder too, so the AFP Mid-Michigan Chapter is going to be taking off for the summer, but hopefully we may be able to see some people outside even over the summer. And our next AFP meeting will be on September 21st at 1 p.m. And the Indiana University of the IUPUI Lilly School of Philanthropy. We're going to have Bill Stankiewicz presenting on the topic of fundraising from the business sector. So that's funny that we just talked about that. But yeah, so it'll be good to engage with him and talk about that important topic as well. So thank you again, Donna, for your time, and thank you all of you for joining us today. I hope you have a blessed rest of your day.
All right. Bye, everyone. Take care.